Welcome back to the channel and a new year and my kid riding this four-wheeler in the background. Stay tuned. So I just got back from the machine shop a little while ago. I want to take a minute to show you guys some stuff. I have a box of goodies. I got this whole the last couple weeks cleaning up the garage. This may not look like much, but trust me, this is clean. I got rid of a bunch of stuff I didn't need, and I have this whole section here ready to put together a 426 when it comes back from the machine shop. And I want to go over with that I had purchased parts wise and why I did what I did and what I bought. So let's get in it. So the heads are back, as you can see, but it's not so much the heads I want to talk about. It's the new overly expensive but totally worth it parts on the heads, in addition to why I went the extra mile on them. So if you'll notice, I have the stabilizers that everybody talks about, the tie bars. These are from MMX, but what just came out are these shafts by Manton push rods. So this is a stock shaft, and these are some super high speed machined, I want to say they're billet pieces, and well, they're night and day. These are gorgeous. So I was going to take a video of them out of the box and stuff, but I got excited and decided to slap them on the head, and here we are. The reason I went the extra mile on these is because with these shafts, especially with high RPM, high horsepower applications, they have a tendency to flex and bend. And seeing all the issues I've had with the valve train up to this point, I didn't see the reason in not taking a little more time, saving up a little more money, and just doing it all one time. So what we have here is a BGE 6.4 Apache head, right? Manton aftermarket valve springs. I want to say they're 660 or 680 lift. These are stock height, stock drop-ins, so there's no pedestal or anything to sit on like the old springs I had were on the other set of 5.7 heads. ARP bolts, because they come, you can option to get them with the tie bars. You don't need them, but I figured what was another 50 bucks after spending that hilariously amount of money that these were. And I'll go over total build costs towards the end. Once we get everything together and on the engine stand, I'll do a full video on costs and why I spent what I spent, where I spent it, because you know, some costs are different for other people and some justifications are different for others. But for me, I wanted to make sure I did a thorough one-time, hopefully, throw together build so that when I put this in the thing, we can go enjoy it and it can do what it's intended to do, which is to tow and haul the family and all that other good stuff. This also just came out right around the same time as these. These are, I want to say, hardened bronze bushings. Now, there's these spacers, these shims, if you will, that I'm assuming go in between here on both heads. I didn't want to open this yet and contaminate these or anything right now. I just wanted to kind of throw this together so you guys can see what I'm working with cylinder head wise. These are just stock rockers. Manton makes an aftermarket rocker. It's expensive, crazy expensive. And for me, for this build, for the kind of power we're looking for and what I'm going to do with it, I cannot justify the price of almost an entire engine for those rockers. Now, if you're one of these guys who are trying to chase Lamborghini, twin turbo Lamborghinis and GTRs and making well over 2,000 horsepower, sure. I'm sure you guys could justify the cost of those rockers a lot better than I could. But for me, and just wanting to have as solid and flexless of a valve train for what I'm going to do and asking this thing to do, the factory rockers are plenty fine. So that, in a nutshell, is pretty much what we got working with on the heads. These will be completed with either a stock valve cover or a Hellcat blower accommodating valve cover. Just kind of depends if I can make this blower deal work or not. And Kinetic head gaskets with ARP bolts, not head studs. I didn't see the point in going with head studs, although I mean, you say if you're spending that much money, might as well spend the extra for the studs. Sure. Studs also make it a raging pain in the butt when you have to change head gaskets, especially given the confines of the engine bay in the Durango, much less a Challenger or Charger. Now, The biggest benefit you get with head bolts and studs is that you don't have to throw them away, since the factory ones are torque to yield like most every manufacturer out there nowadays. However, I will tell you, with the Mod Fords and with the LSs, like in the GTO next to me, I have personally used torque to yield bolts multiple times for low horsepower weekend racer type applications. Now, in this case, since I don't know what the future of the engine itself holds, I didn't mind spending the extra for, bolts, ARP bolts, which are still exceptionally stronger than factory. But I just didn't see the reason to spend that much more money on the head studs, knowing that max we're looking at 8, maybe 1,000 for a really spicy rear-wheel drive Durango that's going to spend 99% of its time hauling the family, going on vacations and all that kind of stuff, like towing this car. That's all it's going to ever do. So I just didn't see the point in any extra clamping force above what an ARP bolt's going to do. Now, I did spend for a main stud kit that got done on the bottom end, because that's just, makes sense, along with, a balance and all the other things. Like I said, we'll do a full video on the parts list and cost and everything. Now, contrary to what's on the cylinder heads, this is pretty much what any Gen 3 Hemi is working with on the top. And it's tried and true, and it works. At the time, like I said, since I was already spending this much money, I went ahead and did the research to kind of figure out what would work best for me, a combination of while you're in there on top of, what makes the most sense given the intended use of the engine and the car overall. So that's pretty much it. I have some video and some pictures of the engine I'll slip in here, so you guys can kind of see it while I'm talking about it. Spoke with Stanley today, and he told me about the engine block plugs to plug the oil squirters, which I was aware of but completely forgot about. And then I ordered them, only to come to the machine shop, and he's like, "Hey, I just made some." I was like, "Well, that makes sense because you're a machine shop." Neither here nor there. Now I got an extra set of engine plugs I won't need on the way that I'll use for maybe another engine later down the road. That being said, seeing the engine pretty much done is exciting. Now, in the photos and the videos, it's not, simply because he has to clearance the block for the counterweights and the rods and all that. And if you guys have ever done a stroke or anything, you know that once you get to a certain size stroke, you got to start clearancing the blocks. And since the block is skirted all the way down, there's quite a bit of material that has to be taken out. That's it. That's all that's left. It'll get washed again and hot tanked again to get all the impurities out once he's done doing all the clearancing and checking everything to his liking. Then we'll get the short block back, and we'll assemble it here on this engine stand and put it in the car, more or less. Now, with that, I also bought a aluminum radiator. It's China Special. Did a quick video earlier about it, and we'll put it in here. So I'm out here looking at this new radiator I just got. It's a Amazon, eBay, whatever, China Special, however you want to look at it. And overall, it doesn't look that bad. I mean, I've had several parts made overseas over the years, as I'm sure anybody watching this video has. And for what I paid, it's pretty much what I expected. Now, I 100% expect to have to do some sort of modification, but overall, looking at it, I bet it won't be too bad. It should more or less drop in, because if you're not aware, the factory radiators on these things aren't terrible, but they're really thin. And so this is supposed to be, if you look here, I nicked that when I took the engine out, so whatever. But that's probably, I don't know, an inch and a half, something like that. And this is, well, every bit of 3. So that alone, and the fact that it's doesn't have plastic intakes or anything, this isn't my first rodeo buying parts, right? And I know as well as you do, regardless of who you buy from these days, be it Mishimoto or Colt Case or any number of companies, there's a 99% chance that shit's made in China. Now, they may have a higher QA process where they come to the States and they go through stuff, or they have somebody go over there and make sure that shit's made to specification. But that's where this stuff come from. And seeing how much money I got in the engine, and we're still going, you know, because I want to make sure this is exactly what I want it to be when I'm done and do what I need it to do. This was a reasonable risk, in my opinion. The radiator's not bad to change on these. I do all my own work, as you can see. So for, I think this was like $250 or something. As long as it holds more water and it holds it to temp and it doesn't spring any leaks and everything like that, and it works, at least increases my capacity, which is my overall goal, get more coolant in the system, I'll call it a win. You know, I'm not racing this car. I mean, we might have some races in this car. It's not a burnout vehicle. We're not going down the track. We're not doing any circle racing. I'm simply trying to improve systems here and there as I can, as reasonable as I can afford to, and this is one of those systems. So I'm gonna close this up, get back in the shop, and we'll get back to talking about this build. So like I said, with that radiator, I don't think that'll be a problem. Could I have spent, you know, maybe $1,000 on some super high speed aluminum radiator that's going to do basically the same job as this one, maybe slightly better? Sure. But given all the things I'm trying to tackle in the project at one time, I got to kind of work smart, along the way. And this is kind of what brings me back to the point of the channel, is a lot of guys out there, they get caught up in the part snobbiness, and they end up spending way more money and way more time on projects that never get finished because they're too busy having the best of the best of the best of everything. There's no reason for that. That radiator there is, I would be willing to bet, not much different than any other official Chinese or overseas made radiator, or one that was, parts were sourced overseas but put together here. Whatever, man. It's got to do one job. It was a little bit more expensive than a factory one, which is plastic and also made in China or Mexico. So I figure if I want to get one, I might as well get one that's all metal. That should help my case better overall for what I'm trying to do. We'll see. At the end of the day, as long as it makes it through the summer and those 100+ degree Oklahoma and Texas days, because we do like to frequent Texas a lot, because that's basically the closest way to get to the beach for us, where I'm at, I'm good with it. Like I said, it's not going to be raced. It's not going to be really beat on or anything, but I am going to make certain improvements along the way in the project that make sense to me and make, more importantly, financial sense. But the core of the long block, like with the heads here and the valve train parts and the stuff I bought for the rotating assembly, the harmonic balancer, which is an ATI unit, that stuff I don't mind spending money on, because if you were like me and you've had your fair share of projects back in the day where you cut corners and this and that and the third, no, man. Spend money where you need to spend it. Save money where you think you can save it. Okay? So, I mean, short of buying a Missouri water pump or some crazy stuff, we're going to spend it as smartly as we can. We want a good, strong, reliable project that we try to weed out as many of the factory shortcomings, like with the tie bars and the beefed up valve train shafts, as we can along the way to make it make sense. Now, I can tell you, I did a rough tally up earlier, and I'm still about $3 or $4 grand cheaper than a used 6.2 supercharged Hellcat engine, without including the blower or anything. So I'm excited to bring that total to you guys, because even with the blower deal I'm working on, I'm still going to beat a used, and this is going off of a $10,000 to $11,000 range used Hellcat engine, by close to $3 grand, if not a little less. So that's exciting, especially considering what I'm going to have as a complete package. Just what you got to look at, the whole package. And obviously there are parts I already had on hand, like the Johnson lifters, which were from the original cam job that which started this whole thing. Those will get washed really good, mineral spirits or something, cleaned and air blown through them and all that. No issues with those. I already have a high volume, high pressure oil pump from Melling, which I'll pull apart and clean it thoroughly. Just good, engineering practices. All that stuff I can't count cost-wise because I already had it. But for the engine build's sake, because technically you could use a factory oil pump and you could use factory Mopar racing non-MDS lifters and be in the same boat more or less. But just understand what I'm trying to achieve overall is a pretty huge feat, especially considering this is a Gen 3 Hemi. Now, if this is an LS car, LS engine, we could build a 1,500 horsepower LS car with all eBay parts. And it might only make 10 passes, but it'll make 1,500 horsepower with the ching-chang hair dryers and all that stuff. Everything from the rods, the crank, pistons, everything from China. Cam 2 and maybe spend $3,500 and it runs strong enough to win maybe a race or two. So given the confines of the fact we're dealing with a Hemi, period, especially a Gen 3 Hemi in this day and age, and being able to build something that a lot of you guys probably thought about, but never really was like, man, those are too expensive. There's no way. They are expensive, but they're not that bad. If you talk to the right people, know what you're doing, do your math, and just selectively buy things to help you in some places, and then just keep OEM stuff in others. So that being said, the next update as far as this car is concerned should be me receiving the engine back and starting the assembly process from the machine shop. Now, as for the GTO, well, we got our turbo roughly where we want it. Got a manifold and stuff. We got to redo the timing cover because that was just kind of like a patch job so I could prove a concept I was thinking about. I got to put the power steering pump in there, which I have underneath the car, and start cutting a weld. I moved the MIG machine right here so it's closer, since I went ahead and reorganized and sold a bunch of old parts and tools and stuff I didn't need to kind of get my shop back, my garage back, you know. And hopefully starting this weekend or next weekend, because I still got to take down Christmas lights. Don't judge me. And start cutting and tack welding pipe on this thing and kind of getting a flow for the engine bay and, you know, getting that turbo mocked up, because it's literally the whole reason the channel exists, because the GTO, right? So that'll probably be a video in between, sometime between now when we get the engine back and start to put the engine together for the Durango. And it's getting cold where I'm in, real cold. Next week's looking to be in the teens. So anything I'm going to do outside, I'm trying to do today or tomorrow and Sunday. And then anything beyond that is going to be selective during the day when it's not freezing cold or whatever, because man, it's getting cold out here fast. And I don't have a heater yet. But if I need one, I'll get one for the garage as far as engine assembly and all that. With that, because it's getting so cold, as far as the Subaru engine's concerned, we'll probably get some machine work done and have the measurements and stuff done at the machine shop, since it's, you know, a controlled climate over there and they have a heater and all that kind of stuff, since it is aluminum and that it is temp sensitive. So anything we do with this block has to be done in a climate controlled area. You can't even really assemble it in a cold garage because you won't get accurate anything really. So, but I am working a deal or trying to make a deal work where I can get some pretty fantastic heads, cam, spring package off of a high horsepower build that somebody had, and it puked an engine, because they all do, and just wants to get rid of the parts. So I'm going to see what parts from that build I can get for this one. And then once I get everything together, we'll have a plan for it. And that project will start more or less immediately after the Durango's patched up, just kind of keep the channel material going while finishing the turbo kit and eventually getting the transmission built for the GTO. So more or less, that's what we're looking like for the first couple of months, weeks maybe, for 2025. And thanks for watching.